Let's bring in Israel advocate and international campaigner Ben Dory. He joins us from London. Ben, it's great to see you. And there is only so much that we know about this deal. There is the aspect of ending the fighting, the return of the hostages, and the creation of an international board of peace to help run Gaza. The Hamas militants have 3 days now to respond, according to the U.S. president. How do you think they will react to this? Do you think this is a deal that they can accept?
Thank you. And well, obviously, it's crucial that Hamas do accept it. Israel has said from day one of this war that the war will only end with Hamas leaving power, with Gaza demilitarized, and with the hostages coming home. My suspicion is, in the absence of any intervention, Hamas will do what they've done every time a deal's been offered to them so far, which is to say no or to drag their feet and avoid giving an answer. And I think Hamas will only actually accept this deal if they're forced to, not only by international pressure, but by some of its major supporters and funders, such as Qatar, which is why it's promising that Qatar have endorsed this deal. The final thing I would just say is that it's not enough for Hamas to just agree to this deal. The world needs to keep on the pressure on Hamas to stick to this deal in the months and years ahead.
Right, and there is a possibility Hamas might reject the deal. How are Israelis in London, however, reacting to this? Prime Minister Keir Starmer declared his support for the deal. He's among the other world leaders who have already accepted this deal. They've praised the U.S. President Donald Trump and for what he's done. They've also had to commend the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who also helped to mastermind this deal. Do you think this is something acceptable to Israelis? And what are you hearing regarding the deal itself?
Well, I mean, Israelis writ large have always wanted this conflict to end, but to end in a way that's sustainable. And the key points of this deal are actually what Israelis have been asking for the whole time, which is the hostages come back home and Hamas leaves power. And that's why there couldn't be a ceasefire before a deal like this is reached. I mean, I can certainly tell you about the views of pro-Israeli Londoners, whether they're Israeli or not, such as the British Board of the Deputy of Jews, who've welcomed the deal, as well as prominent pro-Israel campaigners like Jonathan Sakadoty. So there's been a lot of cautious welcoming of the deal, but hope that it's actually going to be agreed to and enforced. You mentioned Prime Minister Keir Starmer, and as for him, you know, it's welcome that he commends the deal, but it has to be recognized that there are few heads of state who've done more to prevent a peaceful settlement to this war than he has. He, as well as the leaders of France and Canada, recently spearheaded a wave of Palestinian statehood recognition. And really, that was a reward for October 7th, or it's going to be received as such. And it's also going to be a motivator for terrorist activity around the world. And actually, the UK's way of doing that, the Prime Minister's way of doing that, was particularly moronic insofar as they said they would only recognize statehood if a ceasefire deal wasn't achieved by the time of the UN General Assembly, which basically has incentivized Hamas not to agree to a deal like this until now. So quite frankly, the Prime Minister's been an obstacle to peace.
It's interesting you feel this way, and you know, the countries that do support the deal are a bit divided over, you know, whether or not there should be a Palestinian state or not. But just wondering if there's so much hope, how much hope there is reposed on this deal, and what could happen if Hamas rejects it?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly world leaders really, you know, across continents and across geopolitical divides even seem to be rallying around the deal. And they probably see it as the best hope we have for an end to this war. And whether it actually ends up being a solution will depend on one, you know, are Hamas and terror groups genuinely kept out of power and out of arms? And there needs to be meaningful pressure from police and from security to make sure that happens. And two, the future governing force in Gaza has to be a genuine partner in peace and security. And we need to avoid some of the mistakes we saw, for example, in the West Bank, where even though the Palestinian Authority are probably better than Hamas, they've continued to allow Hamas to operate, and they've supported terrorism themselves, such as through kind of pay-to-slay policies. So we need real international oversight, not the fake kind that we've seen, for example, from the UN in Lebanon. if Hamas rejects this deal, I think President Trump has made it very clear what's going to happen, which is Israel is going to have the full backing of the US to continue to do what it needs to do to remove Hamas by force, to get its hostages back by force, to make sure that something like October 7th can never happen again.
Well, Ben, thanks again for expressing your views and thoughts on this.
Thanks for having me.